rates here in the city as well. I know it's a little early, but hey, it's 5 o'clock somewhere, right? I think the trendsetter of all the breweries here in the city has got to be Goose Island. They opened their doors back in 1987. We now have over 66 breweries and counting here in the city. 2 other breweries I would recommend would be the Lagunitas Brewery out on the southwest side of the city in the Pilsen neighborhood. My favorite of theirs is a little something. It's like 7.5% alcohol by volume. And if you like really hoppy IPAs, I would definitely recommend Revolution Brewing. You'll find Revolution taps all around the city with one of the great places on the inside. And if you're looking for a good view and a bite to eat, maybe a little drink, hop on down to the tiny tap down here to the left. And this is just one of the many waterfront restaurants that we have here in the city. Now my friend up ahead was asking about these corncob-looking buildings over here to the left. And those are called Marina City Towers. The top parts of those are residential. The bottom thirds are parking structures. Below that, they've got a whole bunch of stores and restaurants. And even further below that, there is a marina inside of Marina City Towers. Go figure. Now, I know what everybody's wondering. You probably want to know how many cars have fallen out of that parking structure, right? How many do you think? To be honest with you, 2. But they were both intentional and they were both for film. The first was for the Steve McQueen film The Hunter, and the second one was for an Allstate insurance commercial with Mayhem. Are you in good hands? Now these were experimental buildings built back in the 60s because they were trying to figure out if people would want to, or if they could, live this close to a major city and walk a couple blocks to work. They turned out to be a huge success, and we now have residential buildings all around the downtown area. And if you look in between those 2 corn cobs, you're going to find a turtle shell-shaped building. That is the House of Blues. It's a really great concert venue here in the city. But before the House of Blues took over, it was actually intended as a bowling alley and a movie theater for Marina City Towers, as this was built as a city within a city, having everything the people needed right at the base of their building. The House of Blues is a great concert venue, though. I would highly suggest you make your way over there Sunday morning for their gospel brunch, where they perform gospel music and serve Southern-style home cooking. I'm telling you right now, your belly and your heart will feel very full afterwards. And to the right of it there, you're going to see that tall black building to the right of the corn cobs. That building is built by Ludwig Mies van der Rohe, who is considered the father of modern architecture. Now, Mies van der Rohe is known for having an open external support structure design throughout the base of his buildings. So if you see all those black pillars at the base of the building, those actually support the weight of his buildings, leading all the way up to the top. Leaving an open floor plan for offices or residential units to be arranged in any way, shape, or form they please. Now, Mies van der Rohe started up the second school of architecture here in the city of Chicago, and he had a lot of architecture students studying underneath him, one of which created Marina City Towers. Now the architecture created Marina City. He questioned Mies van der Rohe's concepts, and he said, yeah, Mies, that's a really great idea having that open external design, but when are you ever going to see a large black square like that out in nature? Never, right? So his student took that same external design and embedded it into his building, but he made his building look like corn. Something grown very highly here in the Midwest. And to the left, you're going to see that tall white building with a clock tower on it. That is the Wrigley Building. The Wrigley Company originally sold baking sodas and soaps and other home goods. As an incentive to buy their products, used to package it with a piece of chewing gum. Eventually, that chewing gum became more popular than all their other products, giving us what we know today as Wrigley Chewing Gum and Wrigley Field, home of the Chicago Cubs. And if you look directly in front of us there, that is another Mies van der Rohe building. Why else is it important that he made that open external design? Well, as Chicago would continue to grow, so would our streets. Now let's say hypothetically we were to ever extend another lane of road here in the city of Chicago. We can do so and actually have the sidewalks go right underneath the basement of these buildings. We have implemented that all throughout the city, certain spots. And, as you can see directly in front of us, we've built a street right underneath one of these buildings that can fit a double-decker bus. See that really wavy looking building called Aqua. Believe it or not, there are no two porches with the exact same dimensions inside. Not only that, it is designed by the female architect Jean Gang of Gang Studios. We love Miss Gang's work so much here in the city that we gave her the thumbs up to create this other building currently under construction over to the left. That is the Dirksen Tower. At the time of that building's completion in the year 2020, it will be the third tallest building in Chicago, and it will be the tallest residential building ever built by a female architect. And straight ahead of us here, that is the Chicago River. Now, the flow of the Chicago River was actually reversed in the year 1900. Originally, the water would flow out into Lake Michigan, but the water on the river was so polluted that it was contaminating our drinking water out of the lake, giving people of Chicago a bunch of waterborne diseases. Now, it took 11 years and a series of levees and canals to slowly reverse the flow of the river using the force of gravity, eventually sending all that polluted water down the Mississippi River and all the way out to St. Louis, where St. Louis now bottles up all of that polluted water and they sell it as Busch Light. Well, we're going to pull up here to the River Walk, and as we do, this is stop number 1. And at this time, we are going to be standing here momentarily just to make sure we got some signal clearance. It is the beginning of the day, but we're just trying to make sure all these buses are on the right things. So everybody just remain in your seats, and we'll be rolling on the pollution. Still got about 6 seats up top. If anyone wants to come on up, they might not all be together, but you may make a good friend. I think I got 3 all together in the way back. Alrighty, well, welcome aboard. For those of you just joining us, my name is Jack. I'll be your tour guide. Downstairs, driving the bus, we got Ben. Before we get started, just some rules, regulations, things you guys need to know. While the tour is going on, everybody please just keep chit-chat to a minimum. Please silence your cell phones, and let's have some fun, right? Great. Oh, let's talk about my favorite building in the whole city. It's this one directly in front of us at 35 East Wacker. This one's also known as the Old Jewelers Building. Now, what's really cool about it is that back in the day, this building used to have an elevator built for cars inside. Believe it or not, you can get your car from the main floor all the way up to the 23rd floor, where the jewelers were selling their merchandise. That is a security precaution to deter any thefts from going on, as people were making their way out to the parking lots with all of their valuable jewelry. And that big dome that you see at the very top at one point was actually a speakeasy run by Mr. Alfred Monadnock. also has all those qualities. That's right, everybody. I'm talking about that. That being said, this Mies van der Rohe building, as well as a handful of other Mies van der Rohe buildings throughout the city of Chicago, doubled as Wayne Enterprises in the dark night. And as we pass underneath this train line here, we're going to be entering into the loop. Is the iconic Chicago Theater, known for being were in charge of this place. They installed a restaurant inside called the Walnut Room, which is still around today, and it is still serving its famous chicken pot pie. Now, the Walnut Room was actually installed around the time when women were not allowed to be able to walk around the city without being escorted by a man. I know, ladies, we've come a long way, right? Now, the Walnut Room gave those ladies an opportunity to spend their time and all of their money inside of Marshall Fields without ever leaving. Again, give the lady what she wants, you know, baby. To the left there, you're going to see a famous blues musician painted on the wall. That is Muddy Waters. Muddy revolutionized the electric blues movement here in the city of Chicago. The songs are best known as Spanish Bird or I'm the Gucci Man. Center at State Madison. State Street, that great street we're driving on right now, divides the city east and west, and Madison divides the city north and south. The street that we're on right now, Madison, this is the dividing line for a lot of sports fans here in the city. If you're living out on the south side of Chicago, your baseball team is supposed to be the Chicago White Sox. And if you're living on the right side of Madison here, you're expected to follow the Cubs. Now, if you were to continue westbound in about 2 to 3 miles, eventually you would run into the United Center, which is where the Chicago Bulls and the Blackhawks play. That United Center is also known as the Madhouse on Madison. And up here to the left, you're going to see LaSalle Street, which is made famous for many different movies, including The Untouchables, Third Expedition, The Fugitive, and my favorite, The Dark Knight. underneath that tram line. We are now outside of the loop. Specifically, this is the West Loop, or Near West Side as they call it. Now the train line is really the best way to get around the city. It only costs you $2.50 for wherever you're going. And it's like taking an old ribbon roller coaster to work every day. And the street we're turning onto here, this is Wacker Drive. Wacker Drive is the only street in the city of Chicago that can travel in all four directions, north, south, east, and west. We also have 3 different levels to Wacker Drive. We have Upper Wacker, below us is Lower Wacker, and you're going to see the on-ramp to Lower Wacker Drive down here to the left. And even lower than that, there is Lower Wacker. I know, we're real creative with our names here. And no, it's not called Wacker Drive because people get whacked down there. Although Jesse Smollett, the Empire actor, would want me to believe otherwise. It's actually called Wacker Drive because of Charles Wacker, the city planner and architect who helped Mr. Daniel Burnham with the 1909 plan to rebuild the city after the Great Fire. And if you look exit to the left there, you're going to see the Willis Tower, formerly known as the Sears Tower, and formerly known as the tallest building in the world. This is the tallest building in Chicago, and it's the second tallest in the United States, following the Monadnock Trade Center out in New York City. This building stands at 1,451 feet high. Now that is not including the antenna, which adds an additional 280 feet to the very top of the building. This building is so tall, in fact, that on average, the very top pitch will sway about 6 inches on the ceiling. That's just on average, but on a very windy day here in the League City, the very top of this building can sway upwards of 4 feet, with an unobstructed view looking all the way down the road. Also up on top of them, you can actually see 4 different states. You can see Illinois, Indiana, Wisconsin, and Michigan. Now there originally used to be 5 of those glass boxes, but unfortunately we had this little mishap where this family was in from Green Bay, Wisconsin, and they had this terrible accident where they fell and the cheese heads exploded all over Wacker Drive here. Including our crews had to come in with the food. Alrighty guys, this is stop 3, Willis Tower. Is anyone gonna hop out here?
We got lots more buses coming along here, but don't forget the last bus comes by here at 5:15 p.m. Maybe here is stop number 10. They're probably going to be a good hour and a half, something like that. Well, 13 is the lunch spot, but I mean, you can jump off here. There's a McDonald's, a Giordano's. Our next stop is going to be stop number 4. There's a Pret a Manger over there. On our right, we're going by Giordano's Pizza over here up close to our stop number 3. If you haven't tried Chicago-style deep dish, I implore you, give it a try before you leave the city, but don't do it too early. If you've never had Chicago-style deep dish before, you might not know what you're getting into. The best way to do it if you're brand new to Chicago-style deep dish, get it delivered to your hotel, get it carried out, bring it into your hotel room, eat it in bed, and then go straight into a food coma. It's a powerful, powerful food stuff. If you have it earlier in the day, you might be walking around with a big belly full of dough. I would plan it for late in the evening, and if I was doing it, I would do Pequod's up on North Clybourne. That's the best deep dish in the city. Pequod's. Take a look to your right. Look down south on Clark. Can you see that wedge-shaped sand-colored building to our right? That's the MCC, the Metropolitan Correctional Center. That is a federal prison right here in downtown Chicago. R. Kelly's not there now, but he was visiting back in July. Up ahead of us and on our left, just past Dearborn there, that's the Dirksen Federal Courthouse, that smaller black building on our left. A lot of people staying at the MCC are being tried at the Dirksen on federal charges. There's corridors underground connecting together the two buildings. And then here on our immediate left, also part of Federal Plaza, this is the Kaczynski Federal Building. This houses local offices of federal bureaus like the FBI, the IRS, the CIA, FEMA, Homeland Security, INS. I believe the NSA have offices here, but I haven't been able to confirm that exactly. And over here on our right, switching gears, this is the Monadnock, completed in 1892, for a long spell synonymous with Chicago business. Still today, this is the tallest load-bearing brick building in the world. It's not a brick facade. This northern end designed by Daniel Burnham, built up brick by 19th century masons. The walls at the base some 6 feet thick to accommodate all of the extra weight. All of that weight calculated by Daniel Burnham using a pencil and paper. No computer technologies used in the drafting of this building here. Keep a look to your right. Look down south here on Dearborn. Great examples of the first Chicago School of Architecture, some of our earliest skyscrapers. And as we turn up north, great examples of the second Chicago School of Architecture. The Dirksen on our right, the Kaczynski on our left. This is also the U.S. Post Office here on our left. These three buildings and the plaza itself designed by Ludwig Mies van der Rohe, who said God is in the details. Wasn't just concerned about his designs, he was concerned about the construction. If you look down at the wall, look down at the square there, Federal Plaza, there's those squares of concrete, they all line up perfectly with one another. And then they all line up perfectly with every bench, every window, almost like graph paper set down by Ludwig Mies van der Rohe. Everything lines up except for Alexander Calder's flamingo statue there in the back. You might remember that's where Cameron and Sloan stood in the 1986 film Ferris Bueller's Day Off. They stood there waiting for the German parade to go by, come down south here on Dearborn. We still have that Von Steuben parade every September here in Chicago. Have to skip school if you want to see that Von Steuben parade. Maybe remember the St. Patrick's Day parade comes down south on Dearborn. That was featured in the 1993 film The Fugitive. That wasn't in the script. They just happened to be filming here in Chicago. They wanted to see if Dr. Richard Kimball would really be able to disappear here in Chicago, even though everyone was looking for him. So what they did, they grabbed a handheld camera and Harrison Ford. They walked Harrison Ford down the middle of the St. Patrick's Day parade route, being followed around by a handheld camera. No one noticed one of the biggest movie stars in the world, shabbily dressed, walking right down the middle of the street here. Those shots ended up in the final cut of The Fugitive, shot here in Chicago. Also shot here in Chicago, the 2008 film Wanted. There's the scene where James McAvoy quits his cube, hopped into a sports car with Angelina Jolie, filmed over here on our right. Up ahead of us there, this is the intersection of Dearborn and Madison. If you take a look forward, back, left, and right as we pass through this intersection, you'll notice we're completely surrounded by elevated train tracks here, as is the center of the loop. Moving past the center of the loop on our way out towards stop number 4 from Millennium Park, the Bean, and the Art Institute of Chicago. As we cruise up north here on Dearborn, you might notice there are Blue Line subway entrances on either side of the street here. Only costs you $2.50 to hop onto a Blue Line train. You can take it up to the O'Hare Airport stop. Fastest, easiest, cheapest way to get up to O'Hare Airport. If you want to explore Ricker Park, hop on a Blue Line train to get up to the Damon stop. It's one of the cooler, younger neighborhoods here in Chicago. There's also Logan Square available to you here on the Blue Line train. Yeah, here on our day tour, we only
stuff. But if you're downstairs and people do hop up at any given stop, I promise I will let you know how many seats become available upstairs. You will have first dibs to come upstairs if you're already downstairs on the bus.
Out in front there in Daly Plaza, that's where you can find what is possibly Chicago's most famous statue. There's the Picasso on our left. When unveiled in 1967, that was a huge sensation, and not in a good way. When first unveiled here in Richard J. Daley said, "What is strange to us today will be familiar tomorrow." One of the first major modern artworks to be displayed in the middle of a modern Directly up ahead of us there's the Pritzker Pavilion at Millennium Park. We've had free concerts, free performances, free movie showings going on all summer long. We just had our last summer movie showing this past Tuesday. We showed My Big Fat Great Wedding over there at the Pritzker Pavilion. We don't have any more concerts coming up at the Pritzker Pavilion this summer season. I got to see Lydia Lovelace and Brent Cobb perform up over there. That was a world-class free concert there. We've got a little bit more of the Grand Park Summer Music Series just this weekend, just this upcoming weekend. The Grand Park Symphony Orchestra is going to be performing this weekend. That should be the last shows of the season. I don't think they have anything planned for Labor Day weekend. Coming up on the end of another beautiful summer here in Chicago. Over here on our left, we're going by the Chicago Cultural Center. This building originally opened up in 1897 as Chicago's first public library, but ever since 1991, it's been a free and open-air arts museum. Open up the doors, walk inside, give yourself a tour. Beautiful. And earlier this week, we were driving past here, and the Chicago Cultural Center on our left doubled as the Gotham City Gazette. They were filming the new Batman, excuse me, I keep saying Batman or Batgirl. I'm not a 21st century man. Batwoman. She is Batwoman. There's going to be a new CW TV show called Batwoman. It's going to be in the Arrowverse with Supergirl and the Flash and the Legends of Tomorrow, Black Lightning. Pretty soon, Batwoman's going to be joining them. The show's going to be premiering October 6th on the CW. They've done a lot of filming here in Chicago. We double as Gotham City a lot. Up ahead of us on our left there's the Bean. Down underneath the Bean, there's the Park Shop. Show the guys at the Millennium Park gift shop your ticket. They'll give you a complimentary treat-sized, complimentary drawstring bag. When I say the Bean, I'm talking about Cloudgate by Anisha Kapoor, but everybody calls that statue at Millennium Park the Bean. Also at Millennium Park on our left, there's Crown Fountain. Those two giant 50-foot tall LED screens pump out 11,500 gallons of water. Every hour on the hour they do that. And up ahead of us on our left, there's the Art Institute. On Thursdays, the Art Institute of Chicago is open up until 8 p.m. You got lots of time to go exploring in that world-class museum up over there on our left. This is going to be 4. This is stop number 4 from Millennium Park, the Bean and the Art Institute of Chicago. Roads coming downstairs here at stop number 4. 4 from Millennium Park, the Bean and the Art Institute of Chicago. This is 4. Best deep dish pizza in the city of Chicago is Pequod's, Pequod' up on North Clybourne Avenue. Yeah, it's nice crispy. It's not too bready or soggy, the crust. They put just a little bit of carbon on it. They bake it up just right. You can't have a soy, weak, doughy deep dish pizza. You want a substantial crust. That's Pequod's.
An announcement for safety first. They remain seated forever throughout the duration of the tour, even at a stoplight or a stop at the side. To your left is a truly illustrious building, the famous Art Institute of Chicago. Still held by many as being home to the greatest impressionistic painting collection in the world. And one of my personal favorites, George O'Keeffe, who actually broke the record for having the longest painting installed inside of the Art Institute. And right in front of us here and to the left, you'll notice 2 giant columns on either side of the road there. Here in Chicago, we lovingly refer to those 2 giant columns as the gateway to the West, which is totally not original. And if you've ever been through St. Louis, y'all know what I'm talking about. But we do call it that anyway because a couple of streets behind us here is a little known road called Adams. Adams happens to be the starting point of the most famous road in America, Route 66. And now over here on your right-hand side, we've got my personal favorite building in the entire city. Ladies and gentlemen, I do present Roosevelt University. inside, one can actually find the Auditorium Theater, which is one of just a small collection of handful of spaces that actually pass the pin drop test, which is where you literally drop a pin on stage and you can hear it drop from the back of the house using no equipment whatsoever, just the pure natural acoustics of the interior architectural design. A few other buildings I happen to know that also passed that test, just to give you a sense of what they were up against. Carnegie Hall, Sydney Opera House, located over in Australia, and fascinatingly, the Mormon Tabernacle, located over in Utah, also passed that test. Now after this light here turns green, we're going to pull up to that next light at the end of the corner of the building in front of us and to the right. That's the Hilton Chicago Hotel, by the way, the building with the 4 red brick towers on top of it this time. We're going to pull to the far corner side of it and park. That'll be stop 5. Was anyone upstairs actually hopping off at stop number 5? Raise your hands, please, if you are. Good job. All right, then. No one shall be coming downstairs for stop number 50. In which case, we are still full upstairs. No seats available for right now at least. But no one is coming downstairs for stop number 5. Chicago hotels where they saw the chase scenes, the escape scenes, and there's forth. So welcome aboard, my folks who just hopped on board downstairs. I know we are full upstairs right now, but as folks hop off at any given stop, you will have first dibs downstairs. Just, you know, first come, first serve, and I'll always let you know when anyone is hopping off at any particular stop. Now, even though you are downstairs, please do remember the only rule we have here on the bus: safety first. Remain seated always and forever the duration of the tour, even at a stoplight or a stop sign. Look over to your left, everybody. Now, at first glance, you'll notice what just appear to be a bunch of headless walking leg statues. But you actually count all of those headless walking legs together as one single sculpture, making that the biggest sculpture in Chicago, point blank. Its name is Agora, which is Greek for marketplace. It does have a rather sad history to it, however. The artist of Agora, her name was Magdalena. She was Polish, and as a child, survived the entirety of the Holocaust in Poland, no less, which is what inspired her to create that work of art. She recalls as a young girl seeing all the grown-ups in her hometown walking around aimlessly, no direction behind their eyes. They were husks, shells of beans, so to speak. That's why there are no heads, and why technically every single one of those pairs of legs face a different directional plane. Sadly, the coolest thing I can tell you about the world, for one thing I really wish I could not. For you see, it wouldn't even exist if it were not for the late, brilliant Robin Williams, who discovered upon his untimely death that Robin Williams was solely responsible for numerous anonymous donations to public art installations all over the world. Agora, just one of them, who donated over $700,000. Now, folks, do be mindful of the wind in this area. This area is notorious for becoming very, very windy, so if you start to feel it pick up, hold on to your hats. cameras, phones, glasses, the little ones, everything that's near, dear, and important to you. While we are being wary of the wind, however, you may have noticed that down in the ground to your right, we've got some train tracks. I don't know what you're thinking. Incredible. I actually do think they're kind of neat. Those are among the first tracks ever laid in the Midwest. But not only that, when we first laid them down here in Chicago, they literally sat on top of Lake Michigan. Because everything you see around you right now never existed. This was all water. As a matter of fact, the coast of Lake Michigan was originally Michigan Avenue.
Hey Reggie, push that button again, buddy. I'll be right back.
Can you even hear me? You can hear a little bit right there. That's slightly better. So yeah, Soldier Field is that big building over there. They do sports and stuff. American football. That's all you really need to know. Does anybody know who plays there at Soldier Field? Who? I don't know who that is unless he plays for the Bears. There you go. That's how you pronounce our sports teams' names, by the way, folks. Don't do it like normal people and just say the Bears or the Bulls or the Blackhawks. You gotta say the Bears, the Bulls, the Blackhawks, the White Sox, the Cubs. Really intense. You know, everything these guys says. Photo opportunity coming up here on our left-hand side in a moment of Soldier Field for those who actually do enjoy sports. Everything that is, there we go. Everything that looks old, by the way, everything that's cement and concrete, that's all the original stadium. And the giant spaceship on top of it, that was added after the year 2000, 2003, I believe, specifically. There we go, better photo opportunity there. But folks, I do also want to switch gears because now on your right-hand side, going along this gorgeous park district right here. This is all called Gold Star Families Memorial and Park. Is dedicated to all of the fallen men and women of the Chicago Police Force who died in the line of duty. There's actually a tree planted in this park for each and every single one of them. Today, there are just over 400 trees planted in this park. Now that's the Field Museum to your left and Shed Aquarium in front of us, but these are for Stop 7, which is right over here on the corner there to our left. We're first going to go hit up Stop number 6, a little bit further out on top of Lake Michigan. And here we go. If you look down there at the end of the street, at the end of the road there, we've got a building with a big old dome for a roof. My favorite museum in all the land, Hancock Planetarium. Oldest planetarium in the Western Hemisphere, and I thought this was kind of neat. They intentionally designed it as a 12-sided building, simply because they are paying respect to Western Soviet institution of science. Thought that was kind of nifty of them to do. And I know I literally just said it's my third favorite museum, but folks, I will be so bold as to proclaim that the Adler Planetarium is truly the best museum in Chicago, at least when it comes to the shows that they do. And they do multiple different kinds of shows too, but the two I recommend the most, there's the laser show, and that's just fun no matter who you are. But my personal favorite shall always be the Star Show, where they show you what that looks like in real time from right here, if there was no such thing as light pollution. Now we're going to loop-de-loop right here and park on the opposite side of the street. That will be stop number 6 for the Adler Planetarium. Was anyone upstairs trying to hop off at stop 6? Well, we do have one person who's going to be coming downstairs for stop number 6. And here we are, stop number 6, Adler Planetarium. My folks are hopping off. Please watch your step down these stairs and off the bus. Y'all take care. Do enjoy the rest of your stay here in Chicago. And for my folks downstairs, we will have 3 seats open up upstairs. 3 seats. They are single seats. They are not together. That's 3. 1 more than 2. 1 less than 4. 3. Alright, actually, we're going to have 5 seats open up upstairs. Again, they are single seats. They are single seats. Alright, that's all that's coming downstairs here. So, first 5 folks who want to come upstairs, you're welcome to do so. For the particularly brave, one of those seats is next to me. Number 7. Which will be for the Field Museum, and this big old building coming up on our right-hand side, the Shed Aquarium. Now, I feel pretty confident in assuming that everyone here's got a decently vague idea of what you'll find inside the Shed Aquarium, so here's a quick story they don't bother mentioning anymore when you do visit. For many years, Shed Aquarium was home to the world's oldest fish that had ever been held in captivity. His name was Granddad. He'd been held in captivity for 84 years. They estimate that he was 120 overall, and he was a type of lungfish. Granddad was originally caught in the coastal waters of Australia. Then he traveled around for a few years, making new friends, until he made his permanent home right here in 1933. He died. Yeah, like 3 years ago. Super sad. Actually, we'll never forget that year. 2016. I don't know if anyone else recalls what miraculous event occurred in 2016, but I'm sure it's got to be the same thing I'm thinking of, because yes, the Cubs did indeed take home the World Series after losing for 108 years in a row. That's why we'll never forget that year. Cubs win the World Series, Granddad dies. But you know what? He got to see them win before he passed. And that's all that matters. We're going to turn right here and pull into stop number 7, Field Museum, Shed Aquarium. Was anyone hopping off at stop 7? Who's upstairs with me? No? All right. In that case, we still have 2 single seats available upstairs. 2. Welcome aboard, my folks who just hopped on board. They're at stop number 7. Our next stop should not be stop 8, Maggie Daly Park. And as always, please remain seated throughout the duration of the tour, even at a stoplight or a stop sign. And up here to our left is a silver sculpture, and I always look on the inside of the sculpture. Let's see if the fire's still burning. Yes, it is. That's good. That's one of many eternal flames. And we installed that sculpture last year to celebrate the 50th anniversary of the Special Olympics. Fun fact, folks, Special Olympics or Chicago. And over to your right are some magnificent looking trees, but take my word for it, on the other side of those trees you're about to see a big, beautiful, magnificent behemoth of a building. As I'm sure you already know, that will be the Field Museum, our natural history museum, and my personal favorite to visit here in Chicago. It is still home to the world's single most So, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to continue next to stop number 9 for the Sheraton Motel. And give me 1 second, I'll let the sirens go by here. In the tunnels. Now, while we're watching our heads, you may have noticed directly in front of us, we built a whole bunch of buildings. But specifically, I want you to check out that really tall white tower with black vertical lines for windows straight up front and airing on the left-hand side there. That's called the Neon Center. When we first built it, we made that whole thing out of nothing but marble because we wanted it to be grand. About 2 weeks, because we did not take into consideration the extreme temperature fluctuation that occurs when winter is finally upon us. So after a couple of weeks, all the marble on the outside of that building chipped and fell off, turned it into the most hideous building in our skyline. Folks, I kid you not when I say they spent twice as much money as what they paid to build that building. $80 million to replace all of that outside marble with nothing but pure white granite. Plus, obviously, taking off the granite. Once that light up there turns green, everybody, we're going to be crossing over the Chicago River. And folks, just like you're crossing the street, I think it's scenic every time we go across over the river. Although I love it when you're taking pictures, you'll probably want to look out the left-hand side of the bus first. But that this will be stop 9 for the Sheraton Motel, which is this building on our right-hand side. Was anyone upstairs trying to hop off at stop number 9? Raise your hands if you're on. Oh, yes, okay. I think we do have a couple of folks that are hopping off at stop 9. But once we go across the street, we'll shop on. I'll double check once we actually arrive at the stop sign. Here we are now, stop number 9, Sheraton Motel, and I think we do have a couple of folks coming down, maybe. Now to your left, can everyone see that tower with the yellow dome on top of its roof? I always thought it looked kind of like a big old onion up there. That's called the Intercontinental Hotel. Used to be the old Masonic Athletic Club, and folks, I swear, I'm not making this next part up. If you own a blimp, you can dock it on top of the roof right now, today. The original owners who built that building assumed that all the rich people in the world were going to fly around from point A to point B in big giant blimps, so they made it to where you could enter from the roof instead of the street level. Let's say out of convenience. Now, for obvious reasons, blimps never really hit the ramp as hard as people thought they were going to, but the machinery and mechanisms really do still work up there. So folks, I am totally serious when I say, you get yourselves a blimp and Chicago has got your back. Now I'll tell you where you cannot dock your blimp at. Navy Pier. Stop number 2. Navy Pier was built in 1916. Navy Pier was not actually its birth name. Its first name was really Municipal Pier number 2, which is out of 4 total municipal piers. But what's really cray-cray is we never got around to building municipal piers numbers 1, 3, and 4. So we all kind of collectively agreed it was a stupid name, and we changed it to Navy Pier, simply because the equivalent of what would have been considered our Navy at the time had a really strong presence here in Chicago. So we essentially turned it into a naval training base. And we were paying respect to the veterans of World War I. But today, it's the #1 tourist attraction in the city. Lots of stuff you can do down here. We've got a relatively new Ferris wheel, check out the Chicago Children's Museum, or even catch a flick, an IMAX movie experience. We have none of that here in Chicago. Gave us a thumbs up for the Shakespeare show. We're still reeling from that compliment. And if you know Kenneth Branagh, you know it's really sad. Some people remember Shakespeare actors. River cruise, that's where you go. Gray shack, it says shoreline sightseeing. That's where you go to get the architectural river cruise. But outside of that, there's a whole slew of different stores and shops inside, ranging from cheap Chicago souvenirs all the way to probably expensive sports memorabilia. Not to mention a plethora of different restaurants to choose from. Places like Bubblegum Shrimp, Harry Carey's Tavern, Billy Goat Tavern, or the most popular today, Giordano's. Famous for their authentic Chicago-style deep dish of the pizza. Now they get real perturbed at us if we park right in front of their main entrance. So what we're going to do here, folks, is when that light turns green, we're going to turn left. Then we're going to park right in front of some tents that quite literally have our names on them. I know that we got some folks hopping off at Navy Pier, right? Do we still go? Yeah, okay. I figured we'd still have some folks hopping off here. So once we turn left, we'll park, and yeah, we'll be there. It's number 10.
I want to say new. It's been there like 4.5 years now, but
Alrighty then, folks, here we be, step number 10, Navy Pier. Watch your step on your way down, everybody. Take care. Do enjoy the rest of your stay here in Boston.
Oh, well, yeah, it's almost all the stops are near a Starbucks store. Probably, you know what? One of the easiest, if you're wanting to get to a Starbucks, it could be stop 11. So then how do we get back on? is about every 15 minutes, no matter what stop you get off at, and the next bus will be coming through. So, next stop, you're pretty decently close to the Starbucks over there. Stop 13 would be okay. Stop 1. Are you really just trying to get a coffee, or specifically a Starbucks? Just a Starbucks? Where y'all from? Ladies and gentlemen who hopped on board there at Navy Pier, so happy to have you here. I've only got one important announcement for you. Safety first. Please remain seated forever throughout the duration of the tour, even at a stoplight or a stop sign. Now our next stop is going to be stop number 11, Water Tower, Hancock, the magnificent mile, #1 shopping district in the land. But as we make our way over there, I want to change it up a little bit. I'm sure we have all discovered by now that Chicago goes by many different names. But I think we can all agree the most famous nickname of Chicago would have to be Windy City. I know we've heard that one thrown around before, and folks, that nickname, Windy City, has absolutely nothing to do with how windy it is here. It's not referring to the wind, but was really talking about politicians. They all became known as windbags, full of hot air here in Chicago. I thought that was exclusive to our town, but long story short, here's what happened. 1892. Chicago and New York are arguing with each other over who gets the privilege of putting up the World's Fair. Chicago argues so much, New York actually gave up. They basically said, fine, take it, you do it in the future, whatever. She totally did. It was an astounding World's Fair at that too, but here we are now, celebrating back at home like fools. And the reason why is because we named the World's Fair the Columbian Exposition, for it was meant to commemorate exactly 400 years after Christopher Columbus sailed across the ocean. Now, just in case not everyone fully remembers world history class, that was 1492 when Columbus sailed the ocean blue, so make a lot of sense putting it up in 1892. It's very logical, for it is indeed 400 years. Of course, the only problem was we didn't. We put it up in 1893, an entire year late, for no other reason than our politicians arguing about it. Hence, windbags, hence, Windy City. I think that's the first window washer I've ever seen that was not washing a legit window, and is instead doing just the facade part there on the outside. It's awesome. We call those our Spider-Men, by the way. If you ever see the window washers and they're just dangling by the ropes, those are our Spider-Men.
Obama here in Chicago. That was actually whenever his, what do they call it, the motorcades come into town, he's the only president in the history of Chicago where they actually did not disrupt traffic all that bad because they very carefully chose what path to take. They would oftentimes use the second level streets like Lower Michigan, Lower Wagner Drive, things like that in order to get around, which bypassed a lot of the traffic issues that would usually come up when a presidential motorcade is coming up. So just because you're asking about Starbucks, I gotta tell you about this. Look to your left. This building here with all the scaffolding on the front end of it, now that used to be Crate and Barrel, right? Real quick, 1962 is when Crate and Barrel was founded, right here in Chicago. Now that you know they're a Chicago original, I can share with you my favorite part of the entire tour. Ladies and gentlemen, you will never believe who the first store manager of Crate and Barrel was. I wish it was me, because it was really Harrison Ford. Right? The Han Solo for my younger ones on board. The Han Solo and the Indiana Jones. First store manager of Crate and Barrel. But I'll give you one guess what that building that used to be Crate and Barrel will become later this year. Not just any kind of Starbucks. World's largest Starbucks. Which is apparently exactly what downtown Chicago shopping district needed. 5 floors of coffee. And I'm not sure what exactly this means. I don't actually drink coffee, as y'all probably found out by now. But so they're calling it like a roastery or something. It's where they're going to do everything there. They're going to get, other than grow the beans themselves, they're going to get them completely raw, refine them, roast them, do all that kind of stuff. And apparently that's a big deal. So looks like it'll be fun later this year when it actually opens up. Now here in a moment, we're going to drive in between 2 really old, really cool buildings. The castle on the left-hand side is Water Tower Castle, and the building over here to our right is the pumping station. These 2 buildings are the 2 oldest buildings you have seen since you've been here. For these are the only 2 in downtown that actually survived the Great Chicago Fire of 1871. And they survived simply because, as you can see, they are made out of stone. Specifically Joliet limestone, in case I have any rock enthusiasts on board today. And once the light turns green and all these pedestrians allow us, we're going to turn right here and park. This will be stop 11 for our shopping district, Water Tower, Magnificent Mile. Was anyone planning on hopping off here at stop 11 who's upstairs? All right, cool. We do have 1 or 2 folks who are coming downstairs here. Let's see here. Now for my folks who are going to hop off, depending on whether these cars move in front of us, we might have to loop around to the other side of the building, here to our left, but we'll find out. Nope, we're good. Come on. Yep, stop 11. You can watch your stop on your way down. Do enjoy the rest of your stay here in Chicago. Real quick, one more thing that I want to tell you about the pumping station here to our right. I'm part of the community, greatest thing in the world. Inside, one can actually find Looking Glass Theater Company, founded by David Schwimmer, believe it or not, 31 years ago now. And yeah, you're thinking right, that's Ross Geller from France. He founded Looking Glass. And Looking Glass Theater Company is one of the 4 corners of the foundation of nonprofit theater here in Chicago. Nonprofit theater being what put Chicago on the map as far as theater goes, making us the 3rd biggest theater city in the world. Right behind, of course, New York and London. just because we got a hot second. Down there at the end of the road to your right is a wonderful building. It's called the Ann and Robert H. Ullery Children's Hospital of Chicago. I don't think we'll get a chance to see what I'm about to mention here. No, it doesn't look like it, but they do one of the coolest things in the world. When the window washers come out, they wear costumes, right? How awesome is that? So the kids inside, they don't see us. They see Batman, Superman, Spider-Man, all holding squeegees, and I just think that's fantastic. So I like to give them a shout out. Ladies and gentlemen, look straight above you, high into the sky. If you're downstairs, it's on your right-hand side. This colossal black tower is the fourth tallest building here in Chicago, formerly known as the Hancock Tower, home to the 360 Chicago Observatory, where one can also find a famous ride, the Tilt, which does exactly what it's called. It literally tilts you out the side of the 94th floor. And this is stop number 12 that we're pulling up to now. Was anyone upstairs wanting to hop off at stop 12? Yes. We do have a couple folks who are coming downstairs. Give us 1 second. We're going to pull up just a little bit more here. Take care to enjoy the rest of your stay here in Chicago.
They like to put me into the ensemble and say, just sing a little quieter, it's okay.
Welcome aboard all my new folks who hopped on board there at stop number 12. For my new folks who hopped on board, I bet you know what I'm about to say. Safety first. Please remain seated forever throughout the duration of the tour, even at a stoplight or a stop sign. So ladies and gentlemen, we're now making our way to stop 13, so I guess that means it's high time I finally share with all of you the biggest, most important piece of Chicago history that ever occurred in the history of Chicago. The Great Chicago Fire of 1871. And to get us started off with, I will attempt to answer the number one question I am always asked. How did that fire begin? Well, the story goes a little something like this. There was once a cow that lived inside of Mrs. O'Leary's dairy barn, and one night this cow falls asleep while simultaneously kicking over a lit lantern into a bale of hay, which of course burns the barn down, and long story short, makes a whole bunch of people in Chicago really, really mad. But as some of you may have already discovered, we finally acquitted that poor cow. Because as it turns out, he did not actually start the fire. That was all a ruse, ladies and gentlemen, cooked up by a journalist in 1871 who sought out a scape cow to blame for the fire for the sole purpose of selling more papers. And it wasn't until 30 years after the fact, when on his deathbed, he finally admits to the city, oh hey, sorry guys, but I told Big O's made that whole thing up. So, what do you think we do once we discover the truth? Like anybody else, we just blame somebody else. Only this time, all the stereotypes came out. And apparently, it was an Irishman by the name of Pegleg O'Sullivan, who supposedly was a drunkard that had broken into Mrs. O'Leary's dairy barn to steal empty milk bottles to make illegal moonshine. He too falls asleep in a bale of hay, just like that cow, whilst smoking a cigarette, which burns the barn down, and we know the rest. But if we learned anything from that cow, it's that you can't trust Chicagoans in 1871. Folks, we got no idea if that second theory is true. So, ladies and gentlemen, let us recap. What have we actually learned about the fire so far? Nothing. It happened, and that's about it. And strangely, that is partially true, because we still don't know how it really started. Well, I will share with you the most accepted theory today, and this is according to credible scientists who genuinely believe it was meteors. Big, giant, flaming rocks from outer space. So there you have it, folks. You now have my blessing, along with the rest of Chicago's, to tell everyone you know it was aliens from outer space that truly began the Great Chicago Fire. At any rate, that's what we don't know. Here's what we do know. Every possible thing that could have gone wrong did. First building hit by the fire was a cake factory, which was next to a turpentine factory, which was next to a lumber mill, which of course was right next door to a grain mill. Literally the most combustible buildings in this city were the first ones hit. Not to mention the fact that huge gusts of wind was blowing everything around. Everything in Chicago, including our streets and our sidewalks, was built out of wood. And to top it all off, we have been suffering a 3-month drought. So we were natural tinderbox here, folks. That fire raged on for another 2.5 days. Until that third, final, and fateful day, when a magical miracle occurred and a gentle rain. The first one in over 3 months comes over our smoky skies, thus finally extinguishing the Great Chicago Fire of 1871 for good. And that's the basic gist of the fire right there, folks. Congratulations, everybody. You now know what we know about the Chicago Fire. To your right is a brick building. There's some flashy lights right there. That's Portillo's, creators of my favorite Chicago food staple, the Chicago-style hot dog. And we're about to pull across the street and park. This is stop number 13. We're going to park right in front of what may very well be the fanciest McDonald's you've never seen before in your entire life. Now, was anyone upstairs planning on hopping off at stop 13? Yes, we've got some folks hopping off here. As always, my folks are hopping off. Here we are.